Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the human exploration ship Aurora, watching the stars through the main viewing screen. The ship moved slowly through the Centauri Nebula, its scanners searching for new planets that might support human colonies. This was routine work, the kind that paid well but rarely brought excitement. Jake had been in space for 15 years. He started as a young officer fresh from the Earth Naval Academy, eager to explore the galaxy and meet alien species. Now at 38, he commanded his own ship and a crew of 42 humans. The galaxy had turned out to be both bigger and more dangerous than anyone on Earth had expected. The communication officer, Lieutenant Ben Carter, looked up from his station with a worried expression. "Captain, I'm picking up a priority signal from the Outer Rim territories. It's coming through, on all emergency frequencies." Jake walked over to Carter's station. Emergency signals from the Rim were common enough. Pirates attacked trade convoys, mining accidents, trapped workers, and sometimes colonies lost contact with the outside galaxy. The Rim was a dangerous place, where only the desperate or the greedy went to make their fortunes. "Put it through the speakers," Jake ordered. The bridge filled with static, then a voice speaking in heavily accented English. The speaker was clearly not human. His words came fast and filled with panic. "This is Commander Zethka of the Altarian Defense Fleet. We are under attack by unknown forces. Repeat, we are under attack. Ships the size of moons have appeared in our system. They came from nowhere, no warning, no demands. They are destroying everything." The transmission cut to static, then returned. The voice was weaker now, more distant. "Our weapons do nothing to them. They turn our planets to glass. 8 billion people on Kepler Prime are gone. Just gone. The planet is cracked open like an egg. Whoever receives this message, stay away from the Outer Rim. Tell the Galactic Council that the old stories are true. The endless night has returned." The transmission ended with a burst of static that made everyone on the bridge wince. The silence that followed felt heavy and cold. Dr. Lisa Hamilton, the ship's xenoarchaeologist, had been working at her station in the corner of the bridge. She looked up with wide eyes. "Captain, did he say the endless night?" Jake turned to her. Lisa was one of the smartest people he had ever met. She had spent years studying dead civilizations and ancient alien cultures. If something in that message worried her, it worried him too. "You know what that means?" he asked. Lisa stood up and walked to the main display screen. With quick finger movements, she brought up files from her research database. Ancient text appeared on the screen in several different alien languages. The endless night is mentioned in the oldest galactic records. Before the current galactic community existed, before faster-than-light travel was common, there was a species called the Veltar Dominion. They ruled half the galaxy 3,000 years ago. She pointed to symbols on the screen that looked like twisted metal and broken stars. Every ancient culture has stories about them. The Veltar had technology that was far beyond anything else in the galaxy. They conquered entire star systems in days. Their ships were described as moving mountains that could destroy planets. Jake felt a cold weight in his stomach. "What happened to them?" "They vanished. About 3,000 years ago, they just disappeared. The galactic community assumed they had died out or moved to another galaxy. Some scholars thought they had transcended physical existence. Others believed they had simply grown bored with conquest." Lisa brought up more files, showing artistic representations from different alien cultures. All showed the same thing: massive geometric ships, dead worlds, and populations fleeing in terror. But some of the oldest texts suggest a different theory. They said the Veltar went into hibernation after they had harvested everything useful from the galaxy. The theory was that they would return when the galaxy had recovered enough to be worth conquering again. Before Jake could respond, Lieutenant Carter called out again. "Captain, I'm getting more transmissions, different sources, all from the Outer Rim." The next few minutes brought a flood of emergency messages. The proud Zenthari Empire reported losing contact with 4 core worlds. The Michaelian trade guilds sent desperate pleas for military assistance. Independent colonies throughout the Rim went silent one by one. Each message told the same story. Massive ships appearing without warning, weapons that could crack planets, populations wiped out in hours, and always the attackers showed no interest in communication or negotiation. Jake made a decision. Carter, send a message to Earth Command. Priority Alpha. Tell them we need to speak with Admiral Brooks immediately. The communication to Earth took several minutes to connect. When Admiral Carl Brooks appeared on the screen, his weathered face looked tired. Brooks had been fighting pirates and alien raiders for 20 years. He was not a man who scared easily. Morrison, what's your situation? Jake quickly explained the emergency transmissions and Dr. Hamilton's research. As he spoke, Brooks' expression grew darker. How reliable is this information about the Veltar? Brooks asked Lisa directly. Admiral, the historical records are consistent across dozens of different alien cultures. These weren't primitive species telling stories. Some of them had advanced technology and detailed historical records. The Veltar were real, and they were everything the stories say they were. Brooks was quiet for a long moment. In the background, Jake could see other officers moving around the Earth Command Center with unusual urgency. We're already getting similar reports through diplomatic channels, Brooks said finally. The Galactic Council has called an emergency session. 3 major species have asked for military assistance. What are our orders, sir? Jake asked. Continue your mission for now, but stay alert. If these Veltar are as dangerous as the historical records suggest, the entire galaxy is in trouble. And Morrison? Yes, sir? Start thinking about how humans fight differently than other species. If conventional galactic warfare doesn't work against these things, we might need to try something else. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in uncomfortable silence. Jake looked around at his crew. They were good people, professionals, who had signed up to explore and map new star systems. None of them had expected to face an ancient enemy that could destroy planets. Dr. Hamilton, I want you to compile everything you can find about Veltar technology and tactics. Look for weaknesses, anything that might help. Yes, Captain. Carter, monitor all emergency frequencies. I want to know immediately if there are any changes in the situation. Understood, sir. Jake walked back to his command chair and sat down heavily. Through the viewing screen, the stars of the Centauri Nebula looked the same as they had an hour ago, but everything had changed. Somewhere, out there, an ancient enemy had awakened from a 3,000-year sleep, and from the sound of the emergency transmissions, they were picking up exactly where they had left off. The bridge remained quiet, except for the soft sounds of the ship's systems. Everyone worked at their stations, but Jake could feel the tension in the air. His crew was scared, and they had good reason to be. In the old stories Lisa had shown him, the Veltar never lost. They conquered everything they encountered, harvested what they wanted, and moved on. No species had ever successfully fought them. No planet had ever held out against their attacks. But as Jake sat in his command chair, watching his crew work, he realized something important. The Veltar had never fought humans before. And humans, he was beginning to think, might fight very differently than anyone else in the galaxy. The Aurora continued through the nebula, its scanners searching the darkness for any sign of the enemy. Behind them, the outer rim burned. Ahead lay uncertainty and the possibility of a war unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. 3 weeks had passed since the first emergency transmissions from the outer rim. The Aurora had changed course and was now racing toward the last known position of the Zenthari defense fleet. Captain Jake Morrison stood in the ship's war room, studying tactical displays that showed a galaxy under siege. Red marks covered the star map, each one representing a world that had gone silent. The pattern was clear and terrifying. The Veltar were moving inward from the rim in a coordinated, advance, destroying everything in their path. Dr. Lisa Hamilton pointed to the most recent intelligence reports. They're not random attacks, Captain. Look at the pattern. They're targeting worlds with specific mineral deposits and technological capabilities. Jake studied the map more closely. She was right. The Veltar had hit mining worlds rich in rare metals, research stations with advanced laboratories, and manufacturing centers that produced high-tech equipment. They're harvesting, Lisa continued, just like the ancient records described. They take what they need and destroy everything else. Lieutenant Ben Carter entered the war room with a grim expression. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from Admiral Kextai of the Zenthari Empire. He's requesting immediate assistance. The Zenthari were known throughout the galaxy as master warriors. Their empire had never lost a major battle in living memory. If they were asking for help, the situation was worse than anyone had imagined. Put him through, Jake ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing a tall alien with blue-scaled skin and 3 eyes. Admiral Kextai's usually perfect military uniform was torn and burned. His ship's bridge showed signs of recent battle damage. Human vessel Aurora. This is Admiral Kextai. I am transmitting our current coordinates. We are making our final. Stand at Rigel Station. If you have any weapons that can penetrate Veltar shielding, we need them now. Admiral, what's your tactical situation? Jake asked. Kextai's 3 eyes closed for a moment, as if he was too tired to keep them open. We have lost 4 core worlds in the past day, worlds that housed billions of my people. The Veltar ships move in perfect coordination. Their weapons can crack a planet's crust in hours. Our most powerful weapons barely scratch their hulls. The transmission showed the space around Rigel Station. Dozens of Zenthari warships, some of the most advanced in the galaxy, floated as burning wreckage. In the distance, massive geometric shapes moved slowly but deliberately toward the station. How many ships do they have? Jake asked. We count at least 50 major vessels in this system alone. Each one is larger than our biggest dreadnoughts, and they have smaller support ships that are still larger than our cruisers. Jake felt his heart sink. The Aurora was an exploration vessel with light defensive weapons. Even if every human ship in the galaxy came to help, they would be vastly outnumbered. Admiral, we're 2 days out from your position. Can you hold that long? Kextai looked directly at the camera. Captain Morrison, in 1 hour, Rigel Station will fall. My people will be dead. I am sending you all our tactical data on Veltar. Capabilities. Perhaps your species can find something we missed. The transmission cut off as the station's communications array was destroyed by enemy fire. Jake turned to his communications officer. Carter, get me a priority channel to Earth. Command, I need to speak with Admiral Brooks immediately. While they waited for the connection, Dr. Hamilton worked frantically at her station, downloading and analyzing the Zenthari tactical data. Her face grew pale as she read the reports. Captain, their weapons are beyond anything we've seen. The Zenthari report that Veltar energy beams can penetrate 6 meters of reinforced battle armor. Their ships generate shield fields that absorb 98% of incoming weapons fire. When Admiral Brooks appeared on the screen, his expression was harder than Jake had ever seen it. Behind him, the Earth Command Center was filled with activity as officers rushed between stations. Morrison, I assume you've heard about the Zenthari defeat? Yes, sir. Admiral Kextai transmitted tactical data before his position was overrun. The enemy capabilities are beyond anything in our current arsenal. Brooks nodded grimly. We've been analyzing similar reports from across the galaxy. The Galactic Council is in complete panic. 3 major species have already sent surrender offers to the Veltar. They were ignored. What are our orders, Admiral? You're to proceed to the Rigel system and conduct close-range reconnaissance of Veltar forces. We need detailed scans of their ships and weapons. Use extreme caution and do not engage. Jake felt a chill. Sir, are you sending us to observe their technology? Morrison, Conventional galactic warfare has failed completely. Every species that's fought the Veltar has used the same basic tactics: ship-to-ship combat, energy weapons, and honor-bound engagement rules. None of it works. Brooks leaned closer to the camera. But humans don't fight like other species, do we, Captain? We've never been particularly concerned with honor in warfare. We've always been more interested in winning. The transmission ended, leaving Jake with a growing understanding of what Brooks was suggesting. He called his senior officers to the war room for an emergency meeting. Lieutenant Commander Amy Foster, the ship's tactical officer, arrived first. She was young, but had shown impressive creativity in combat simulations. Behind her came Chief, Engineer Roy Patterson, and Dr. Hamilton. "I want ideas," Jake said without preamble. "The conventional approach has failed against the Veltar. We need to think differently." Amy spoke first. "Sir, if their shields can absorb energy weapons, what about kinetic impacts? A ship moving at high speed could potentially breach their defenses." Roy nodded thoughtfully. "We could modify the ship's engines for a ramming attack, overload the fusion reactors to create a massive explosion on impact." Dr. Hamilton looked disturbed. "You're talking about suicide attacks?" "Yes," Jake said simply, "because conventional warfare doesn't work against them. Amy, start working on modifications that would allow us to ram enemy vessels at maximum velocity. Roy, I want options for overloading our reactor in a controlled way." "Captain," Dr. Hamilton protested, "this violates every principle of galactic warfare conventions." Jake turned to face her. "Lisa, how many worlds have the Veltar destroyed in the past 3 weeks?" She checked her data pad. 47 confirmed. Destroyed. Estimated death toll is over 200 billion. "And how many Veltar ships have been destroyed using conventional tactics?" Lisa was quiet for a moment. "None that we can confirm." "Then conventional tactics are useless. We need to try something else." The next day, the Aurora dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Rigel system. What they found was worse than the reports had suggested. The space around the former location of Rigel Station was filled with debris from destroyed ships. The station itself was gone, replaced by an expanding cloud of metal fragments. But it was the Veltar ships that drew everyone's attention. The enemy vessels were massive beyond imagination, geometric shapes that looked more like floating cities than ships. They moved with slow, deliberate precision, their dark hulls reflecting no light. "Passive scans only," Jake ordered. "I don't want them to know we're here." Amy worked at her tactical station, gathering data on the enemy ships. "Captain, these vessels are enormous. The smallest one I can detect is over 20 kilometers long. The largest is almost 100 kilometers. Any obvious weaknesses?" "None that I can see. Their hulls show no damage from the battle with the Zenthari fleet. It's like they're completely invulnerable." Dr. Hamilton had been studying biological scans of the enemy ships. "Captain, I'm detecting life signs aboard those vessels. The Veltar are biological beings, not machines." Jake felt a spark of hope. "If they're alive, they can be killed." "But sir," Amy said, "our weapons can't penetrate their shields." "Then we don't use weapons, we use physics." Jake turned to Roy Patterson. "Chief, how much damage would our ship cause if we rammed one of those vessels at full velocity?" Roy considered the question. "If we overloaded the fusion reactors and impacted at maximum speed, the explosion would be equivalent to several nuclear weapons. But, Captain, that would destroy our ship and kill everyone aboard. Would it damage them?" "Unknown, sir. But it would certainly get their attention." Jake walked to the main viewing screen and stared at the enemy fleet. Somewhere in those massive ships were the beings responsible for destroying billions of lives. They seemed completely confident, moving through space as if nothing in the galaxy could threaten them. "Set course for Earth," he ordered. "We need to report what we've learned." As the Aurora turned away from the Veltar fleet, Jake made a mental note of their formations and movement patterns. The enemy ships showed no signs of concern about potential attacks. They acted like apex predators, who had never faced real resistance. But they had never faced humans before. And humans, Jake was beginning to realize, had a very different attitude toward acceptable losses in warfare. The journey back to Earth gave Jake time to think. The galactic community was on the verge of collapse. Ancient enemy had returned with overwhelming technological superiority. Every conventional approach had failed. But humans had never been conventional, and if the choice was between extinction and using tactics that other species found disturbing, Jake knew which option his people would choose. The Veltar might be about to learn that their worst fear wasn't human technology. It was human determinati. The Veltar fleet had reached the outer edges of human space. Their massive scout ships moved through the asteroid fields near Alpha Centauri, scanning for signs of resistance. They had encountered 43 different species in their advance through the galaxy. All had followed the same predictable pattern: attempt negotiation, engage in conventional warfare, then either surrender or face extinction. High Admiral Zekmor commanded the lead dreadnought from his control chamber. He was ancient even by Veltar standards, having commanded fleets during their last conquest cycle 3,000 years ago. His elongated skull bore the ritual scars of a supreme military commander, and his 6 arms moved with practiced efficiency across the control interfaces. "Report on local species capabilities," he commanded his tactical officer. The humans appear to follow standard galactic warfare protocols. Their ships are small and lightly armed. Estimated fleet strength is less than 1% of our advance. Force. They should provide minimal resistance. Zekmor felt satisfaction at the familiar pattern. Another weak species to be harvested and discarded. The humans had built colonies on 17 worlds in this region. Their populations would provide useful biological materials, and their technology showed some interesting innovations that could be studied before destruction. Begin standard pacification protocol. Target their military installations first, then proceed with population harvesting. The first target was a human military outpost on the edge of the system. 3 Veltar destroyers, each one larger than the humans' biggest ships, moved in to begin the attack. Captain Jack Sullivan commanded the human destroyer Vengeance at the outpost. He had received Admiral Brooks's new orders 2 days ago, along with detailed modifications to his ship's systems. The orders were unlike anything in human military history, but Sullivan understood the situation. Conventional tactics had failed across the galaxy. It was time to try something different. "Enemy ships approaching," reported Lieutenant Katie Bell from the sensor station. 3 vessels, each approximately 15 kilometers in length. "Are the modifications ready?" Sullivan asked his engineering officer. "Yes, sir. Fusion reactors can be overloaded on your command. Nuclear mines are armed and ready for deployment." Sullivan studied the approaching enemy ships on his tactical display. They moved with the slow confidence of predators who had never faced real resistance. Their formation was perfect for conventional ship-to-ship combat, but poorly suited for what Sullivan had planned. "All hands, this is the captain," he announced over the ship's communication system. "Today we show these aliens how humans fight wars. Remember, our goal isn't to survive this battle. Our goal is to kill as many of them as possible." The crew responded with grim determination. They had all volunteered for this mission, knowing it was likely to be their last. The Veltar ships opened fire first, sending streams of energy that could vaporize a city block. The Vengeance's shields absorbed some of the damage, but the ship shook violently under the assault. "Return fire," Sullivan ordered, but he knew their weapons would do little damage to the enemy shields. As expected, the human energy weapons barely registered on Veltar sensors. The enemy ships moved closer, preparing to board and capture the human vessel for study. "Now," Sullivan said quietly. The Vengeance's engines suddenly flared to maximum power, sending the ship racing directly toward the lead Veltar destroyer. At the same time, the ship released a spread of nuclear mines in its wake. High Admiral Zekmor watched the human ship's approach with confusion. What is the human vessel attempting? Unknown, High Admiral. Their course will result in direct collision with our destroyer. Are their navigation systems damaged? Before his tactical officer could respond, the Vengeance smashed into the Veltar, ship's hull at full velocity. The impact alone might have done little damage, but as the human ship's hull cracked open, its overloaded fusion reactors exploded in a blast equivalent to 50 nuclear weapons. The explosion tore through the Veltar, destroyer's shields and hull causing massive damage. Secondary explosions rippled through the enemy ship as its own power systems overloaded. Within minutes, the 15-kilometer destroyer was breaking apart. The nuclear mines the Vengeance had released during its attack run exploded among the other Veltar ships, causing additional damage and confusion. Zekmor stared at the tactical display in shock. In 3,000 years of conquest, no species had ever deliberately destroyed their own ships to damage Veltar forces. High Admiral, we have lost destroyer Talvek with all hands. The human ship committed deliberate suicide to ram our vessel. That is impossible. No civilized species employs suicide tactics. Nevertheless, High Admiral, it appears that is exactly what they did. While Zekmor tried to understand what had happened, similar attacks were taking place throughout human space. Captain Helen Price led a squadron of modified human fighters against a Veltar supply convoy. Instead of engaging in traditional fighter combat, she coordinated simultaneous ramming attacks that overloaded the convoy's shield generators. Colonel Danny Rivers commanded ground forces on the human colony world of New Texas when Veltar landing. Craft descended through the atmosphere. Instead of meeting them in open battle, Rivers ordered his troops to use tactics that violated every galactic convention of warfare. Human soldiers deployed chemical weapons designed to cause maximum suffering, rather than quick death. They used civilian areas as cover, knowing the Veltar would hesitate to fire on non-combatants. When Veltar troops advanced, they found explosive devices hidden in hospitals, schools, and residential areas. "This is madness," reported Ground Commander Veclor to the fleet. "The humans are using their own civilians as shields. They show no regard for the rules of civilized warfare." The Veltar had never encountered an enemy that prioritized victory over honor, effectiveness over ethics. Their military doctrine assumed that all intelligent species would follow basic protocols of civilized combat. Dr. Peter Kane, working in his laboratory deep beneath Earth's surface, made a breakthrough that would change the nature of the war. His research team had analyzed samples of Veltar biotechnology captured from destroyed ships. "Admiral Brooks, we've discovered something important," Kane reported via secure communication. "The Veltar use biological components in their technology. Their ships, weapons, and even their life support systems contain living tissue." "What does that mean for our war effort?" Brooks asked. "It means we can develop biological weapons specifically designed to target their technology. A virus that attacks their ship systems from the inside." Kane's team worked around the clock to develop what they called the ship killer virus. Unlike conventional weapons that attacked enemy ships from outside, this weapon would be delivered by human ships that deliberately rammed Veltar vessels. As the human ships broke apart, they would release the virus directly into enemy ship systems. Commander Amy Foster, now promoted after Captain Sullivan's sacrifice, led the first mission, using the new biological weapon. Her ship, the modified cruiser Retribution, carried viral payload in specially designed canisters throughout its hull. "Target the enemy flagship," Foster ordered as her ship approached a Veltar battle group. "If we're going to die, let's make it count." The Retribution's ramming attack succeeded in breaching the Veltar flagship's hull. As the human ship broke apart, the viral canisters ruptured, releasing their contents into the enemy vessel's atmosphere. Within hours, the Veltar flagship began experiencing system failures as the virus attacked the biological components of its technology. Weapons went offline, life support systems failed, and the ship's navigation became erratic. High Admiral Zekmor found himself facing an enemy unlike any in Veltar history. The humans didn't fight to capture territory or negotiate favorable terms. They fought to kill as many Veltar as possible before dying themselves. High Admiral, we're receiving reports of systematic attacks on our logistical networks. Human forces are targeting our supply convoys, maintenance facilities, and communication relays. What is their strategic objective? Unknown, sir. They appear to be focused on causing maximum damage to our capabilities rather than achieving territorial gains. Zekmor studied the tactical reports with growing unease. Human attacks followed no recognizable pattern of civilized warfare. They showed no interest in protecting their own populations, no concern for minimizing casualties, and no apparent desire for negotiated settlement. High Admiral, we're also receiving disturbing reports from ground operations. Human forces are broadcasting recordings of Veltar death sounds on all communication frequencies. They appear to be using psychological warfare. The broadcasts were indeed having an effect on Veltar forces. For the first time in their recorded history, individual Veltar commanders were reporting fear among their troops. The certainty and coordination that had made them unstoppable for 3 millennia was beginning to crack under the pressure of human tactics. Dr. Lisa Hamilton, now serving as a military intelligence analyst, helped coordinate the psychological warfare campaigns. Her deep knowledge of Veltar culture allowed her to identify specific fears and weaknesses that could be exploited. They're used to being the apex. News of human military successes spread throughout the galaxy faster than official reports could travel. On the Zenthari homeworld, Admiral Kextai listened to intercepted communications with a mixture of hope and horror. The humans had achieved what no other species had managed. They were actually killing Veltar ships. "These humans fight like wild animals," reported his intelligence officer. "They show no regard for their own survival, no respect for the conventions of civilized warfare." Kextai studied the tactical reports with growing unease. Human forces had destroyed 17 Veltar vessels in the past week, but at the cost of their entire attacking fleet. Every human victory resulted in total casualties for the human forces involved. "Are they insane?" his tactical advisor asked. "No rational species accepts casualty rates like this." "Perhaps," Kextai replied, "but they are winning." On Earth, Admiral Carl Brooks stood in the command center reviewing Operation Cleansing Fire, the most ambitious human military campaign in history. Unlike previous operations that focused on defending human territory, this operation would take the fight directly to Veltar-controlled space. "Dr. Kane, report on the new weapon systems," Brooks ordered. Dr. Peter Kane looked exhausted but determined. His research teams had been working without rest for 6 weeks, developing weapons specifically designed to exploit Veltar weaknesses, discovered through brutal interrogation of captured enemies. "Admiral, we've completed development of the Terror weapons. These are specifically designed to cause maximum psychological impact rather than quick military victory." Kane activated a holographic display showing technical specifications. The Screamer missiles are equipped with sonic generators that broadcast Veltar distress calls on frequencies that cause panic in their species. The corrosion bombs release acids that slowly dissolve their ship hulls over several days, trapping crews inside dying vessels. And the biological weapons? The new virus strains are designed to kill slowly and painfully over several weeks. More importantly, they spread through Veltar atmospheric recycling systems, meaning one infected ship can contaminate an entire fleet. Brooks nodded grimly. "Begin mass production immediately. I want every human ship equipped with these weapons within 2 weeks." Jake Morrison, now commanding the heavy cruiser Retribution, received his orders for Operation Cleansing Fire with mixed feelings. The operation called for simultaneous attacks on Veltar staging areas throughout the galaxy, but the tactics specified were unlike anything in human military history. "Sir," his tactical officer, Lieutenant Sarah Green, said quietly, "these orders specify no prisoners, no mercy, and no survivors. Are we really going to execute wounded enemies? Morrison looked at the young officer with tired eyes. Sarah, how many human colonies have the Veltar wiped out completely? 14, sir. How many billion people have they killed? Estimated 60 billion across all species, sir. And how many Veltar prisoners have offered useful intelligence about stopping their advance? Sarah was quiet for a moment. None, sir. They don't surrender. And when captured, they don't provide information. Then we stop taking prisoners. Our job isn't to be nice to them. Our job is to end this war. The first target for Morrison's task force was a Veltar mining operation in the Vega system. Intelligence reports indicated the enemy had enslaved the surviving population of 3 human colonies to work in automated mining facilities. When the Retribution and its escort ships dropped, out of faster-than-light travel, they found a scene that filled Morrison with cold rage. Veltar ships hung in orbit around what had once been thriving human worlds. The planet's surfaces showed massive strip mining operations where cities had once stood. Tactical analysis, Morrison ordered. 12 enemy vessels, sir, mix of destroyers, and support ships. The orbital platforms appear to be processing facilities for extracted materials. Any sign of human survivors? Yes, sir. We're detecting human life signs in the mining facilities on all 3 worlds. Morrison made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Target the mining facilities first. No Veltar operation survives this day, regardless of human casualties. The attack that followed was systematic and brutal. Human ships used the new terror weapons to disable Veltar vessels without destroying them quickly. Enemy crews found themselves trapped aboard ships that were slowly dissolving around them, while sonic weapons broadcast the sounds of their dying comrades. Lieutenant Colonel Nancy Wright led ground forces in the liberation of the mining facilities. Her orders were specific: eliminate all Veltar personnel and secure any human survivors. What she found on the surface made her troops understand why the new tactics were necessary. The Veltar had not simply enslaved human prisoners. They had conducted medical experiments, used humans as test subjects for new weapons, and forced survivors to watch the execution of their families as motivation to work harder. Colonel, reported Sergeant Paul Hunt, we've found the detention facilities. The Veltar have been torturing prisoners for information about human psychology and warfare tactics. Wright looked at the evidence of systematic brutality and felt her remaining doubts about their mission disappear. Understood, Sergeant. Continue with the mission. No Veltar personnel survive. The attack on the Vega system had an unexpected result. When news of the human tactics reached other Veltar forces, it created the first recorded instance of fear among enemy command personnel. High Admiral Zekmor received reports of the Vega attack while commanding the main Veltar fleet. His tactical officers described human actions that defied all understanding of civilized warfare. High Admiral, the humans executed all Veltar personnel, including wounded and non-combatants. They broadcast recordings of the executions to our other forces in the region. This violates every convention of galactic warfare, Zekmor replied, but his voice carried uncertainty for the first time. Sir, we're also receiving reports that human forces are using biological weapons specifically designed to cause prolonged suffering. Several of our ships report crew members dying slowly from engineered diseases. For 3,000 years, the Veltar had been the galaxy's ultimate predators. They had conquered through technological superiority and ruthless efficiency, but they had always followed their own codes of military honor. They killed quickly, harvested efficiently, and moved on to the next target. The humans fought differently. They seemed to take satisfaction in enemy suffering. They broadcast the sounds of Veltar death screams as psychological warfare. They developed weapons designed specifically to maximize fear rather than achieve quick victory. High Admiral, we're receiving surrender offers from several human colonies. Should we accept them? Zekmor considered the question. Standard procedure was to ignore surrender offers and proceed with harvesting operations. But the humans had proven they could inflict significant casualties on Veltar forces. What are their terms? They offer to provide intelligence on human military capabilities in exchange for protection from our harvesting operations. Accept the surrender. We need to understand how the humans are achieving their tactical successes. But when Veltar forces arrived at the human colonies that had offered surrender, they found empty worlds. The humans had evacuated their populations and left behind automated systems that broadcast false surrender messages. Worse, the colonies had been converted into massive trap systems. When Veltar ships entered orbit, hidden weapons platforms activated, releasing clouds of the biological weapons that attacked enemy ship systems from within. Dr. Lisa Hamilton, now serving as Chief Intelligence Analyst for Human Forces, watched the tactical reports with professional satisfaction. The psychological profile is working perfectly, Admiral. They're beginning to doubt their own tactical doctrine. Admiral Brooks studied the galactic situation map. Human forces were vastly outnumbered and outgunned, but their unconventional tactics were creating chaos in Veltar operations. What's the casualty ratio, Hamilton? We're losing approximately 50 human lives for every Veltar killed, sir. But our tactics are causing them to hesitate, to second-guess their commanders, and to fear engagement with human forces. And their overall strategic position. They're still advancing toward the galactic core, but at a much slower pace. More importantly, intelligence reports suggest growing dissent among Veltar command personnel. Some are questioning whether this conquest cycle is worth the cost. Brooks felt a grim hope. The Veltar were still technologically superior, but they were no longer psychologically invincible. Human tactics were forcing them to fight a type of war they didn't understand. Continue current operations. And Hamilton, start planning our final phase. Sir, we've shown them we can hurt them. We've shown them we can hunt them. Now we need to show them we can end them. As the war entered its most brutal phase, both sides prepared for a final confrontation that would determine the fate of the galaxy. The Veltar still possessed overwhelming technological advantages, but they were fighting an enemy that cared more about victory than survival. And for the first time in 3,000 years, the outcome was uncertain. The final battle began in the Veltar home system, where massive world ships housed billions of their species in hibernation chambers. These ancient vessels had served as mobile bases during the Veltar's last conquest cycle 3,000 years ago, and now they represented the enemy's last major stronghold. Admiral Carl Brooks commanded the human fleet from his flagship, the modified dreadnought Terra's Wrath. Around him floated the largest human military force ever assembled. 300 ships of various sizes, all equipped with the most brutal weapons human science could devise. All ships, this is Admiral Brooks, he announced over the fleet communication network. Today we end this war. The enemy has shown no mercy to any species they've encountered. We will show them the same consideration. Commodore Jake Morrison, now commanding a task force of heavy cruisers, studied the tactical display showing the Veltar world ships. Each one was the size of a large moon, containing not just military forces, but the civilian population of an entire species. Sir, reported his tactical officer, we're detecting massive life signs aboard those world ships. Estimated population in the billions. Morrison felt no hesitation. Understood. Proceed with the mission. Dr. Peter Kane had outdone himself in developing weapons for this final assault. His latest creation was a modified version of Veltar hibernation. Technology turned into a weapon that would trap victims in eternal consciousness while their bodies slowly decayed. The beauty of this weapon, Kane explained to Admiral Brooks, is that it doesn't kill quickly. The highest-ranking Veltar commanders will remain aware and suffering for years while their bodies fail around them. Brooks approved the weapon without hesitation. Deploy it against their command ships first. I want their leadership to understand exactly what defeat means. The battle began with a coordinated human assault unlike anything seen in galactic history. Instead of attempting to capture or disable enemy vessels, human forces targeted every Veltar ship for complete destruction. Captain Helen Price, commanding the destroyer Vengeance 2, led the first wave of attacks against Veltar defensive positions. Her ship and its escorts used ramming attacks combined with biological weapons to breach enemy lines. "All ships, remember your training," Price announced to her task force. "We're not here to survive this battle. We're here to ensure none of them do." The human ships crashed into Veltar defensive platforms with devastating effect. As each human vessel broke apart, it released clouds of engineered viruses that spread through enemy ship systems, causing slow but inevitable system failures. High Admiral Zekmor watched the human assault from his command world ship with growing horror. The humans were not attempting to minimize their own casualties or preserve captured territory. They were focused entirely on causing maximum damage to Veltar forces. "High Admiral, the humans are targeting civilian evacuation ships," reported. His tactical officer with disbelief. "That violates every principle of civilized warfare," Zekmor replied. But his protest sounded hollow even to himself. "Sir, they appear to be following a doctrine of total extermination. No Veltar vessel is being spared, regardless of military significance." Dr. Lisa Hamilton, working from the Human Fleet's Intelligence Center, had identified the location of the Veltar Central Consciousness Repository. This massive facility contained the memories and knowledge of their entire species, accumulated over millions of years of existence. "Admiral Brooks, we've located their cultural archives," she reported. "The facility contains irreplaceable historical records and scientific knowledge." Understood. Mark it as a priority target. Hamilton felt a moment of doubt. "Sir, this represents the accumulated knowledge of an entire civilization. It could provide enormous benefits to galactic science." "Dr. Hamilton, how many civilizations have the Veltar completely destroyed?" "Estimated at over 200 species during their recorded history, sir." "Then they've forfeited any right to preserve their own legacy, target and destroy." "General, Susan Clark coordinated ground assaults on the Veltar world ships using tactics that horrified even veteran human soldiers. Her forces used captured Veltar civilians as human shields, deployed chemical weapons in populated areas, and executed prisoners in public to demoralize enemy forces. General, these tactics are extreme even by our current standards," reported Colonel Frank Lee, one of her battalion commanders. "Colonel, the Veltar have spent 3,000 years perfecting the art of genocide. Today we show them what happens when they meet experts." The ground assault proceeded with systematic brutality. Human forces moved through the world ship's deck by deck, eliminating all resistance and executing any Veltar personnel they encountered. No quarter was given, no prisoners were taken, and no mercy was shown. Lieutenant Colonel Danny Rivers, leading assault troops in the deepest levels of a Veltar world ship, discovered hibernation chambers containing millions of sleeping civilians. His orders were clear. "No Veltar survives." "Sir?" asked Sergeant Roy Collins. "These are non-combatants. Children, elderly, civilians who've been asleep for thousands of years." Rivers checked his orders again. "Sergeant, Admiral Brooks was very specific. Total extermination, no exceptions. The hibernation chambers were flooded with nerve gas, killing millions of sleeping Veltar without waking them. For Rivers, it was a mercy compared to what they were doing to enemy military personnel." High Admiral Zekmor found himself trapped aboard his command ship as human forces overran the outer defenses. His tactical displays showed the systematic destruction of every Veltar facility, every ship, every sign of their civilization. "High Admiral, we're receiving surrender offers from our remaining fleet commanders," reported his communications officer. "Are the humans accepting surrenders?" "No, sir. They appear to be ignoring all attempts at communication. They're not interested in negotiation or conditional victory." Zekmor realized with growing terror that he was witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history, the complete extinction of his species carried out with systematic efficiency. "Doctor, Kane's final weapon proved devastatingly effective against Veltar command personnel. The modified hibernation technology trapped enemy leaders in a state of eternal consciousness while their bodies slowly failed. Zekmore found himself paralyzed, but fully aware as his nervous system gradually shut down. "You monsters!" he managed to whisper as human soldiers secured his command center. Captain Morrison, leading the boarding party, looked down at the dying Veltar commander without sympathy. "You started this war 3,000 years ago. We're just finishing it." The battle continued for 6 days, but the outcome was never in doubt. Human forces systematically destroyed every Veltar ship, every facility, every trace of their civilization. The world ships were cracked open like eggs. Their populations vented into space. Their cultural archives were reduced to ash. Their technological databases were wiped clean. When it was over, Admiral Brooks stood on the bridge of Terra's Wrath, looking out at the debris field that had once been the Veltar home system. Millions of ship fragments drifted in space, along with the broken remains of the world ships that had housed an entire species. "Casualty report," he requested. 70% of our fleet destroyed, sir. Estimated 40,000 human casualties. But we have achieved complete mission success. No Veltar vessels remain operational. No survivors detected. Brooks felt a mixture of satisfaction and emptiness. The galaxy was safe, but the cost had been enormous. More importantly, the methods used to achieve victory had changed humanity forever. "Sir," reported his communications officer, "we're receiving transmissions from the Galactic Council. They're requesting an immediate meeting to discuss the post-war situation." Brooks could imagine what that meeting would be like. The other species had watched humans systematically exterminate an entire civilization using tactics that violated every principle of civilized warfare. They would be grateful for the victory, but terrified of the victors. "Send them a message," Brooks ordered. "Tell them that human military forces are now available to assist any species threatened by external aggression. We guarantee the security of all peaceful civilizations." The unspoken message was clear. The galaxy now had new protectors. But those protectors were more dangerous than any threat they might face. Commodore Morrison, standing among the wreckage of the Veltar fleet, reflected on what they had accomplished. They had saved the galaxy from an ancient terror, but in doing so, they had revealed exactly what humans were capable of when pushed to war. The Veltar had been right to fear the return of an ancient enemy. They had simply been wrong about which species that enemy would be. 6 months later, the galactic community had settled into an uneasy peace. Human military forces patrolled trade routes and protected vulnerable systems with devastating efficiency. Piracy had virtually disappeared. Territorial disputes were resolved quickly and permanently, but every species in the galaxy now understood that their protectors were also their greatest potential threat. Humanity had demonstrated that they were willing to commit complete genocide to achieve their objectives. They had shown no mercy, no hesitation, and no regret in wiping out an entire civilization. The galaxy was safer than it had been in millennia. It was also more terrifying because everyone now knew exactly what humans would do to anyone who threatened galactic peace. Admiral Brooks, now serving